barriers. From a small backroom theater challenging a despotic regime to the courage of individuals searching for expression. With rich colors and clear voices, people communicate to a wider world. Artscape, coming soon on Al Jazeera.
This is the first unanimous Security Council resolution to refer a case of heinous human rights violations to the International Criminal Court.
Taking action, the United Nations Security Council slaps sanctions on Libya's government. Hello and welcome to Al Jazeera Live from Doha. I'm Taimur Nabili. It has become the world against Gaddafi, with the UN Security Council voting unanimously for sanctions on Libya. Australia's foreign minister, meanwhile, has told Al Jazeera the UN still needs to go further.
Australia fully supports the imposition of no-fly zones within Libya itself.
Well, inside Libya, the uprising against the government continues, and so does the crackdown. And we'll go inside Muammar Gaddafi's secret underground world.
So now we're getting into the nerve centre of Gaddafi's bunker. And you can see here that he's really set up to withstand a nuclear apocalypse.
Well, the UN believes that its sanctions package will have a real impact on Gaddafi and will help the people of Libya. Some diplomats believe up to 2,000 people may have already died in the crackdown on anti-regime protesters over the past 10 days or so. And the UN resolution has demanded the following: an end to the violence in Libya and the recognition of people's legitimate demands. It wants an investigation into the bloodshed and for the attacks on civilians to be referred to the International Criminal Court. It also wants an end to all arms sales to Libya. Well, how are those sanctions going down in Libya itself? Let's go to Benghazi. Tony Bertley is standing by in the city where the uprising pretty much started. Tony, I guess the recognition by the international community that the UN resolution implies is going to be welcome. But, you know, I guess there's also the possible downside that sanctions may actually harm some of the citizens in some respects.
I think they've had so much harm over the last 42 years or so, they won't mind a little bit more, especially because it's aimed in the right direction. I think the people here, though, while welcoming those sanctions, would like to see them go a little bit further. And many I've spoken to would support the Australian point of view that the air exclusion zone be imposed, because we're not exactly sure of the capability that Gaddafi still has in the air, but he's got helicopter gunships and he's still got Air Force jets and bombers, and he could bring those into play. So people here are a little bit concerned that the sting in the tail from Gaddafi before he finally goes, when he goes, could be to use air power. So they'd like to see that stopped and nipped in the bud.
More than 40 years of iron-fisted rule virtually over, and Libya's second city, Benghazi, is still celebrating. The old and the young taking to the streets to embrace a new era.
This is feeling I had never, ever been felt before.
It's liberation, but at a price. People here say that more than 750 were killed in the uprising, over 1,000 wounded. This is the coffin of 64-year-old Saad Zoué, a bus driver shot dead by Gaddafi loyalists, a simple man who wanted something many take for granted: freedom and democracy.
He was only a driver. He had nothing to do with Gaddafi.
His anger is shared by millions who are now finally able to speak out about the oppression and brutality of their leader.
All the people, they used to work with Gaddafi, they're out. We need them out. We need a new system.
To cheers and rapturous applause, a pre-Gaddafi Libyan flag was unrolled on a government building in the centre of Benghazi. Gaddafi may still be in power, but here they feel their suffering at his hands is almost over. There is a tremendous sense of jubilation here, a tremendous sense of freedom and liberation. It's an electric atmosphere, you can feel it all around. But there is a small note of apprehension. Gaddafi's elite brigades and his mercenaries are about 400 kilometres from here. That's just over a 3-hour drive. And the Libyan leader is showing no signs of going just yet. The uprising was aimed against the state apparatus. Police buildings were burned and the heavy weapons used as the arm of oppression have been turned into souvenir props.
Libya, Libya!
Above it all, they shout Libya, at peace with their beloved country, but at war with their leader. And all eyes are now on Tripoli. With most of eastern Libya in the hands of the opposition, the momentum is growing and forces are now building for an assault against the remaining Gaddafi strongholds. In Benghazi, they no longer say good morning, they say instead new beginning. For them, it has begun. For the capital and a few other towns, they'll have to wait for just a little while longer.
Tony, the little air of apprehension still there, you say, and the possibility that there may be some loyalists remaining. But by and large, it seems as if they're planning for a future without him. What's the status of this so-called interim government?
Well, they've been meeting in the last 24 hours and the tribal leaders from the area have come together, and I think if anything signifies probably the end of Gaddafi's rule, it's the fact that they've all come together to talk about this interim government. So they're getting on with business as if Gaddafi's already gone. Of course he hasn't, he's still a bit of a thorn in the flesh, but nevertheless these people have come together. There have been a few kind of voices of dissension, because some people have complained to me that the same old faces are taking part in this interim government, some of the old Gaddafi cohorts, if you like. That's not going down very well, but we're told it is an interim government. What happens in the future is a different thing, but at the moment they're still riding this wave of euphoria and very, very happy, but they are now mobilizing for the final assaults to liberate Tripoli and the other remaining towns.
What about on a personal level, Tony, the people that you're talking to on the streets? Are they happy now to talk to foreign media? Are they still a little bit apprehensive about possible blowback on this?
No, they're totally open now. They want to tell you their story. It's gushing out of them. They'll come up to you. We've spoken to people who've suffered injustice. We've talked to people who've been tortured, beaten in the state security prisons. People now have got this great sort of expunging of what's happened in the last 42 years. People who have lost loved ones from as far back as 1996. People who have never been able to speak their minds and stand up free. Now they are doing that. Everybody will come up to you in the street. You're mobbed and they want to tell you a story. So it's quite something to be here and to feel that kind of sense of liberation. But you also feel that sense of hurt and that suffering that's been building up for 42 years. So it's quite an amazing scene, to be honest, and I don't think the pictures can actually convey that kind of sense of liberation.
All right, Tony Birdley, live in Benghazi. Thanks, Tony. Now let's return to the UN decision to put sanctions on Libya now. Now, is this resolution just more talk, or will it actually have a concrete effect? Here's what the US and the Libyan ambassadors had to say about it.
Well, we have, as a Security Council today, imposed tough and binding measures to prevent the flow of arms in and out of Libya, to freeze the assets of the leadership who are committing these atrocities, to prevent the travel of those same people and those that are supporting them. These are all very specific and concrete measures designed to end the violence and enable the people of Libya, as I said in the Security Council, to continue to be able to express themselves freely and now without violence.
We expect the regime to think about this resolution which has been passed today. We also expect those who are collaborating with the regime to take a position and side by the Libyan people. These are preliminary measures. I hope that these measures will help ending the tragedy which our people are facing right now.
Well, let's take a closer look at who is being targeted by these UN sanctions specifically. Now, one of the most visible faces of the entire Libyan regime thus far has been this man, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. He is Muammar Gaddafi's second oldest son, and he's being accused of inciting violence. There's another Gaddafi son, Saadi Gaddafi, who's also being targeted by the UN. He's commander of the country's special forces, the people that have been cracking down on the protesters so far. And then, of course, there is the man himself, Muammar Gaddafi. In charge for more than 40 years, he's coming under fire once again from world leaders for his human rights abuses. There's another son, too. Khamis is on the radar. He commands some military units that have been allegedly opening fire on the protesters as well. And there's a daughter, Aisha. She is also on the target list from these sanctions. But even these sanctions are not enough for some. Australia's Foreign Minister Kevin Rudd has told AlJazeera in the past hour that more measures still need to be taken.
The actual teeth of this UN Security Council resolution are quite sharp. Firstly, in terms of the targeted sanctions against members of the regime, this is very important. The Gaddafi family has significant financial assets invested around the world, including in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. This therefore affects directly personal financial interests. Secondly, an arms embargo is necessary in order to prevent the further resupply of military equipment to those military units remaining supportive of Gaddafi. And thirdly, the criminal court reference is important. It's only the second time in the history of the UN this has been done. It's not so much that Gaddafi himself may take notice of this, but those underneath him must realise that in executing any command to take violent action against civilians, these people who have pulled triggers will be brought to justice as well.
Let me stop you there if I could for a moment. Just forgive me for interrupting, but the point remains that the fact is that Gaddafi has, for 40 years now, more or less snubbed his nose at the international community anyway. These threats, these sanctions will mean nothing to him, particularly since he's already vowed to die a martyr in Libya should the need arise. So my question remains, in between the time that these sanctions that you say are not toothless, they're very sharp-toothed, when they actually have an effect on the country in some sense, in between that time and now, there could still be enormous bloodshed. What is the international community going to do if he uses the arms he already has against his own people and starts causing some serious bloodshed?
The first thing I'd say also is that you said that Gaddafi himself may be contemptuous of these measures. Those underneath him who take his commands may actually be attentive to these measures, because that is the whole purpose of the International Criminal Court. However, I also believe that further action needs to be taken by the Council. You mentioned before the desirability of no-fly zones over Libya. We in Australia fully support that course of action. In my own correspondence with the President of the Security Council, I have said that Australia fully supports the imposition of no-fly zones within Libya itself.
Now, Tripoli is one of the few remaining strongholds of the Libyan leader. His base is in the city in the district known as Bab AlJazeera. And we've been hearing from one resident who lives close to that base on how the people around there are coping.